Feature Set Summary. Linux Air Combat includes all of the basic features expected by modern fans of the flight simulation genre. Although the graphics and sound effects are somewhat sparse by today's standards, they are adequate to the task, and certainly good enough to inspire an active imagination into a credible flight session. And the sensation of flight is unusually smooth. 68 flight, view, and communication functions allow computer pilots to immerse themselves in the joy and mirth of simulated flight with breathtaking relish. Overall, LAC's features compare favorably with Windows-based flight sims from the genre's classic period like Flight Simulator 2, or Air Warrior 3, or Aces High 1, or Warbirds. One of the most important considerations of any computer-based flight simulator has to do with the view system, the way the computer pilot is able to turn his virtual head to look forward, backward, left, right, up, or down. By default, LAC is pre-configured to support the classic, industry-standard Air Warrior view system, allowing the pilot to switch instantly between those views using appropriate, geometrically arranged keys based on the numeric keypad. This is the same kind of view system that has been in constant use by most flight sim fans for the past 20 years, but it can be completely reconfigured for pilots that are accustomed to some other layout. For example, it is trivial to change that default view system to rely on the joystick's hat switch instead.
Alright, I'm operational.
Furthermore, because LAC is intended as a realistic simulator and not as a mere game, it has no game-specific magic spells or special features to memorize. It's all just history and science. If you already have a good understanding of the aerodynamic and air combat sciences, you won't even need to read the instructions once you have your controls mapped to your liking.
I got him.
Available aircraft. LAC now models 54 aircraft from World War II. YouTube has a playlist that can show them all, and Flight Sim fanatics might enjoy a look at that. The flight model details may not be scientifically perfect, but top speeds, climb rates, roll rates, turning rates, durability, and the lethality of the respective weapons are all credible and typically fall reasonably within the ranges described in available historic and anecdotal records. The developers report that historic accuracy is best when flying at low and medium altitudes, and that flight performance becomes a little less accurate as altitudes increase beyond about 20,000 feet. Some compromises were made in the interests of gameplay and fun, but sim pilots willing to use a little imagination will easily fantasize that the experience is real. As in classic real-world aircraft, LAC's flight controls generally begin to feel heavy at extremely high speed, with some aircraft suffering more than others from this compressibility effect. For example, the early war P-38F Lightning becomes almost uncontrollable on a high-speed dive, but the late war P-38L version can recover from that condition by activating the very same simulated dive flap that was used in the actual aircraft. Flight speeds tend to increase with altitude as thinner air and correspondingly diminished air resistance interact with various types of superchargers able to scoop enough air into greedy engines to sustain full power up to their respective height limits. On the other hand, the thinner air at high altitudes degrades climb rates. Eventually, above the well-researched high-altitude limits, even the aircraft with the best superchargers begin to wheeze and gasp for air, resulting in diminished overall performance. Some of the simulated aircraft are equipped with speed brakes or dive brakes that can help them to suddenly decelerate, or at least to maintain reasonable control at extreme speeds. Some are equipped with war emergency power settings that are capable of extracting the utmost power from their engines for a few minutes at the cost of massive fuel consumption and the likely need for an overnight overhaul by the ground crew afterward. Some are equipped with primitive single-level flaps, while others are blessed with several levels of flaps. Some are equipped with tail gunners, and some absolutely bristle with defensive guns automatically firing as needed toward airborne threats in all directions. Some have fearsome, forward-firing cannons that can shred opponents, while others are armed only with small, lightweight machine guns that demand sustained aiming and shooting before significant damage can be inflicted. And exactly as one might expect, all of the aircraft that can lug heavy bombs or rockets suffer diminished performance until they can shed that extra weight. All of these differences are historically based, according to the best available records and anecdotal reports. Cockpit Instruments. LAC's cockpit is completely standardized. No matter what kind of airplane you choose to fly, the cockpit will look exactly the same for the selected mission. Furthermore, LAC's instruments look more like a modern digital glass cockpit than a World War II warbird. That choice has helped to make it easier to learn LAC than other sims that move instruments around to match each simulated aircraft. It also contributes to LAC's remarkably high frame rate and the silky smooth sensation of flight. A YouTube video is available from within the main LAC playlist that provides a comprehensive tour of the cockpit. Network integration. LAC's communication and network features are arguably among the very best of all online flight sims, even by today's standards. LAC is all about multiplayer, internet-based missions. Of course, that will require an internet connection. LAC's network bandwidth demands are modest too, even if you rely on just an old 56 kilobit per second modem-based connection. You ought to be able to participate in the 10-player online missions without experiencing undue lag or warps. Let's talk about LAC's router panel. One of LAC's most important innovations is the network router that's visible near the upper right corner of the cockpit instrument panel in all of the online missions. Like all multiplayer network flight sims, LAC players send and receive frequent network telemetry packets to one another in order to locate themselves relative to one another and to the simulated geography. On the network router panel, 2 rows of 10 little light bulbs blink on and off to represent incoming telemetry or VoIP packets from the 10 players that can participate in each of those missions. The server relays incoming packets from nearby participants more frequently than from distant participants. Accordingly, a quick glance at the network router panel can reveal the number of active mission participants as well as their relative distance from the player, because the lights corresponding with nearby participants will blink much faster than distant ones. When any of them begins to speak on the simulated interplayer voice radio, his corresponding voice light bulb illuminates. Interplayer communication. During online missions, LAC's most basic tool for interplayer communication is its powerful Morse code radio. By pressing the caps lock key, players toggle their keyboards back and forth between the usual flight mode and Morse code radio mode. When the Morse code radio is active, printable keystroke characters are transmitted, received, and displayed one by one across a separate little cockpit panel that illuminates when in use, where every player in the mission can see them. Most online flight sims have something like this, permitting players to send text messages to one another, but in a small gesture illustrating the care and quality with which LAC has been groomed, LAC goes farther, accompanying every transmitted character with the authentic beeps and tones of real Morse code. If Morse code radio traffic ever suffers from congestion or deliberate interference, convenient function keys allow automatic muting and unmuting of the current sender, or of the entire blue team, or of the entire red team, allowing clear reception of the remaining information. For voice communication, the LAC community relies on the free, open source, well-known Mumble voice over IP or VoIP application. As a companion or helper program, Mumble's use is optional, but it is highly recommended. Linux Air Combat and Mumble work hand in hand. LAC's remappable keyboard controls and cockpit panels work in cooperation with a powerful free Mumble server available at linuxaircombat.com. The combination makes it easy to meet other LAC fans and to arrange cooperative or competitive interaction in any of the 3 supported missions. The LAC Mumble server even includes dynamic web-based tutorial help focused on each of its rich set of channels dedicated to support missions, mission teamwork, or just chatting with other flight sim fans. That online Mumble-based help will even display a convenient map of LAC's keyboard, numeric keypad, and joystick controls for reference during missions. When flying in one of the multiplayer missions, the interaction with Mumble becomes even more powerful because LAC's cockpit panel illustrates Mumble actions as if it were an aircraft radio, revealing all transmission, reception, and channel-changing activities of everybody in the mission. LAC commands Mumble to switch channels automatically as the user changes missions or teams. During missions, players that earn a good reputation can even be promoted by their peers, allowing them to take mission-wide command of the team's use of Mumble channels and ensuring that strategies are appropriately communicated among team members but kept private from the opposition. Under the leadership of a promoted player, this team-wide integration with Mumble is really impressive and amazing to experience. The first time your entire team simultaneously switches to an obscure Mumble channel for a more private conversation away from the eager ears of the enemy, makes private plans, and then, exactly 2 minutes later, simultaneously and automatically switches all together back to their team channel, you get an idea of the care and detail that went into LAC's player management. Players that have been promoted into team leadership can issue team-wide commands to switch everybody to an obscure private channel, or to the team's missioncast channel where all conversations are public to both teams, or to the team's teamcast channel, which is isolated from the other team, or even to the system-wide root channel, where new users looking for action might be recruited. All of these team-wide channel switching commands are transmitted over the Morse code radio, and only players that have been promoted can issue them. LAC's promotion system is elegantly simple. No player can promote himself, but any player can promote any teammate just by transmitting a specially formatted Morse radio message. Once a player is promoted, his promotion remains until he is killed or leaves the mission, giving teammates an extra incentive to protect him and giving his opponents extra motivation to target him.
Enemy headquarters airfield ACAC strength between 10 and 20%. They are under 20%.
This partnership between Linux Air Combat and Mumble even simulates radio chatter with a forward observer, whose automated voice rewards players for tuning to proper mission channels with periodic espionage updates on enemy airbase damage and maintenance activity.